been selling home on the West Side for quite some time now, and I have watched people making the same mistake over and over. They read a national headline like prices softening, market cooling, inventory surging, and they apply it to a house in Westwood or a condo off of Montana Avenue in Santa Monica. But it doesn't work that way. The West Side has its own market. It has its own supply constraints, its own buyer pool, and its own logic. And right now, in August of 2026, the data tells a more interesting story than anything you'll read in a national real estate roundup. I'm going to break it down neighborhood by neighborhood with real numbers so that you can make a real clear-headed decision. No spin, just what the data shows. So before we get into it, if you want to know more specifically about your home value, how much it's worth in today's market, please reach out. You can always text me at 310-488-2158, and I would be happy to help you with that. So let's first compare the national versus your street. So the national numbers actually say, because context matter, of course, that the first half of 2026 nationally, home sales were up nearly 4% over last year. More buyers came back. But here's the thing, prices didn't follow. Price per square footage nationally is running about 2% below last year. In other words, more activity, but flat prices. Now, the markets pulling those national numbers down are mostly high inventory in Sunbelt cities, places where builders overbuilt during the pandemic, and now they're sitting on the supply. That's not Los Angeles. Definitely not West Side. You know why? Because we don't build here. Zoning, geography, politics, whatever the reason, new inventory doesn't appear on the West Side the way it does in Phoenix or Austin. And a lot of existing owners are sitting on a 3% mortgage, and they are not interested in selling into a 6% rate environment. That keeps supply off the market. The result is that the West Side has held firmer than the national softening. That's the honest answer to, are prices dropping in LA? For our market, not much. Now let's look at the neighborhood by neighborhood. Let me give you actual numbers because West Side, it's a little bit consists of multiple markets. Santa Monica, median sales price in July was $1,697,000. Days on the market, 57 days. That's longer than it has been. In Brentwood, average price is about $2.6 million, down about 6% from a year ago. And days on the market went 43 days to 70. That's a notable shift. So Brentwood has definitely softened. In Westwood, the average median single-family home is about $2.4 million, up about 6% year over year. Condos are about $995,000. Westwood has held well. And it's partly because of UCLA demand and partly because the inventory has been pretty tight. The takeaway is that every neighborhood has its own dynamics and it's different. West Side consists of many neighborhoods, so you have to know which neighborhood you're actually in before you make a decision. Now let's talk about the inventory. More inventory doesn't mean crash. Inventory on the West Side is up 15 to 18% year over year. That sounds significant, but here's the context. Months of supply on the West Side is still around 3. A balanced market is 5 to 6. And we're talking about months. So we're talking about a balanced market being 5 to 6 months. We're not there yet. What does more inventory actually feel like? If you've been watching the same 4 houses recycle on Zillow for 6 months, you now see 6 or 8 houses. There are more choices, but it's still limited supply. So there is no crash building underneath all this activity. So what has actually changed? It's time. Yes, this is the thing I want to let the seller know, and I want them to hear me clearly. Days on market have changed dramatically. In the past, many homes in some Westside neighborhoods were selling in 18 days. We're now seeing 50, 60, even 70 days on the market. That's not a collapse. That's mainly we're getting more normal. That's normalization after years of frenzy. What it means for sellers, you cannot throw up an ambitious price and wait for someone to just blink. You'll sit. Buyers in this market are more measured. They're doing proper inspections, thinking about their monthly payments, comparing options. Give them a reason to choose your home from day one, or they will keep looking. What it means for buyers is that you have time, not unlimited time, but real time. You can see a home twice, sometimes 3 times. You can read the disclosures, and that wasn't really possible in the previous years. Now let's talk about rates. Mortgage rates are sitting in the mid 6% range. They've been relatively stable there for months. Stability lets buyers plan, and that's part of why we've seen steady activity this year. But here's what you need to understand. Rates are the single variable that changes everything else. If they go above 7%, buyers pull back. More inventory builds. The balance shifts towards buyers. Probably not to crash levels because our supply is so constrained, but it shifts. If rates ease below 6%, the opposite happens. More buyers come in. Competition picks back up, and sellers regain leverage very quickly. I'm not going to predict where rates go. Nobody knows. But what I would say is watch that number. It determines what the rest of 2026 will look like on the West Side and elsewhere. Now, if you're thinking about selling, the good news is that prices haven't gone off cliff here. The discipline you need is pricing to today's prices, not to what your neighbors got in a bidding war previously, and not to what someone got last April either. I had a client who wanted to price 12% above recent sales. We had a real conversation. The homes priced at comps in their neighborhood were selling. The ones priced above were sitting at 60 to 70 days. That gap between priced right and priced with hope is very visible in this market. If I were you, I would get a real comp from an agent who knows the area, not Zillow, not Redfin, actual closed sales, last 90 days, within half a mile. That's the number you're going to make your decision based on. Now, if you're buying, this is genuinely one of the more favorable windows that I've seen in recent years. Prices are not crashing, but they're not running away. You have more time for due diligence than you've had since 2019. You might even negotiate a repair credit or a price reduction fairly easily. Things that were unimaginable 3 to 4 years ago. The buyers doing best right now are pre-qualified with a solid lender and clear on what they want. When the right property comes up, they can move quickly. The ones waiting for a bigger price drop are still watching, and they might be waiting for a long time because supply on the West Side remains structurally limited. This is not a buyer's market in the classic sense, but the frenzy is gone. If you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for a calmer moment, this is closer to that than anything we've ever seen in a while. If you are somewhere in between, I'm thinking about it and I'm ready to do something, that's exactly when we should talk. Not because I'm going to push you towards a decision, no, but because it takes a few conversations to go to figure it out whether now is actually the right time for your situation or not. Of course, you can always text me or email me. All the contact information are in the description of this video. And if you want a closer comparison between Westwood and Santa Monica, watch one of my videos that I made about a client who chose the right area best for her situation. Thank you again for watching. And remember, when it's time to simplify, I'm going to be on your side. See you next.